Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about depression and stress. What is that correlation? What's the integration? And how we could possibly lessen our depression. Now, we just got a question that came in from our audience that we're doing with navigating midlife metabolism and mood. And again, we're on that theme of depression. People are feeling a little bit, I like to use the word dysthymia, where we're feeling a little bit low or blue and not quite feeling ourselves. And how does stress relate and contribute to this? And we're going to continue our discussion. And perhaps we can start with how stress affects our gut. We just finished talking about how our gut microbiome gets affected by antibiotics and the foods we eat and or don't eat, and some of the chemicals in our environment. But stress, that perceived threat, creates momentum in our own mind that can possibly cause inflammation. And it actually will bring on depression because it's changing the landscape of our biochemistry. So, Dr. Laurell, what do you think about that change in biochemistry from cortisol, that great stress hormone that we've all been talking about all the time we talk about it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're so right. We talk about this so much because stress is so significant in so many of our lives, and then we end up in a state with elevated cortisol or maybe even lower than normal cortisol. And either way, it impacts us. Cortisol is so important. We need it there to drive our metabolism, but in the right amount. And we get uh, too much of it, and it can uh, disrupt our gut and very directly affect our brains and do so much more. So this is a really important topic that we just can't talk enough about.
Well, if we look at, I was thinking about this as you're saying it because I had done work in psychiatry, and I remember when they were doing the seminars on vagal stimulation. And I got really excited one day because there was going to be a meeting on vagal stimulation. And I got excited because of my background in yoga science. And I was thinking they were going to do these breathing practices to stimulate the vagus nerve. So I end up at a meeting and they're talking about a device that they actually implant in the human being. And they use that for, of course, alleviating depression. And I was thinking, wow, all these years doing yoga asana practices where you use pranayama, special breathing practices, even basic breathing using the diaphragmatic muscle will actually change the ecology of the whole system, alleviating depressive symptoms. So that's just very, very interesting. And that also relates to what you were saying about cortisol. That's why I brought it up. It'll actually give you the relaxation response rather than being stressed all the time. And we have the stress. We have so much stress. Someone just came back from Hawaii and they were telling me they've never been out to Hawaii and they had come from India. And they said, wow, it's so different than I live in the Northeast. So different. The pace is so different. The atmosphere is so different. It's less stress. And I found that just very interesting. So we live with this constant buzzing, this constant feeling of tightness. And when we leave this environment, we realize, wow, we've really been under a lot of stress, which I define as a perceived threat, always on guard, always on notice, not being able to just let down and let yourself be.
Yes, absolutely. And you and I both work with a lot of women in our age range who are either going through menopause or have already gone through menopause. And all these issues can become even more important at this time of life because one unfortunate thing that's true about the menopausal transition is things that we maybe dealt with in our younger life that got better or mostly resolved can kind of pop up again. And so particularly if we had dealt with depression or mood challenges in the past, we might be even more vulnerable at this time as our hormones are changing so much, because estrogen used to be there kind of buffering the impact that cortisol has on our brain. And they've also shown that one of the reasons why women are more likely to deal with depression than men is because women have a more varied cortisol response than men do, depending on what time we are in our cycle, if we still have menstrual periods, or they even think that our brains might kind of still be doing some of that cycling even after we don't have the periods, and that it's that actually variability in our stress response that's making our brains a little more vulnerable.
Yeah, that was also very interesting when I learned of how the changes in estrogen will affect the brain in that way, and we don't handle stress or handle pressure. When we define stress, we're looking at it, I define it as a perceived threat. And that's when I teach meditation, I speak about as we train ourselves to go inward and bringing the mind inward, our perceptions will change drastically over time. So, what used to be a threat or a perceived threat, we can just brush it off. And that comes sometimes with age also. We just
Hmm.
become more mature. We don't sweat the small stuff, as they say.
Hmm. Yes,
But,
good point.
and so, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and sometimes how I define stress is the number of demands on us compared to our ability to meet those demands. And another way that we can lift some of those demands is to look at which of those demands we're putting on ourselves and let go of some of those.
Well, yeah, that's the mind training. We learn that to step back instead of always reaching for something else and stepping forward. And again, I'm older than you, and I believe by a decade or more. In that it does come I'll give you some hope as we get older. It does come where things don't, we don't have to react the same way that we used to. So
Mhm.
cortisol and stress does affect uh, our ability to feel happy, to be uplifted in our mood. And
Mhm.
again, I had mentioned in our last segment on the microbiome, it directly affects that, not just the food we eat, but our thoughts, the food we feed our mind. And that's thoughts, associations, relationships. What kind of environment are we creating for ourselves that really can affect our level of being? That doesn't mean only associate with happy people, because that doesn't exist. It means to be able to be so contained with the stability within the self, and you can train yourself to do that, that it no longer becomes a problem if you are in a situation where others might not be as grounded. And that takes training. And
Mhm.
there's no quick fixes in this lifetime. And right now, we're at a real crucial point in life. It's amazing. I know people say that there's a lot of darkness. Well, with the darkness, there's so much light that can actually be seen. And that light will lift you. Step into the light. I used to say to, there's a few clients that I had, take the lampshade off, step into the light. And that's who we are. So, if we have a lifestyle that's a very healthy body, we do need a healthy body. It makes a really bit of difference. And a healthy mind and healthy breathing patterns where we can work with the vagal response, you can actually lift depression, because depression is, I'd like your opinion on this, but I say that we've been overstimulated. And with the overstimulation, we have then the letdown. You can't stay stimulated all the time. So whether if you're overstimulated from stimulants like, we drink coffees and teas or caffeine, or other things for stimulation, or stimulation from the shows we watch on our Netflix series or whatever series we're watching, or stimulation from noise, or stimulation from anything. it's going to deplete the system eventually, and that depletion is what we fall into in depression. So in working with depression, I know when I work with clients, I want to replete the system. So once the system gets repleted from the body, also body, mind, the spirit, bringing that repletion of nourishment back, the depression then is lifted. I've done that with my own life. So that experience, I don't just get it from the books. The experiential model is the model that I choose. So I look at it as a stimulation that's overstimulated that then needs to be repleted because we're exhausted from the adrenals. We can go to the biochemical very easily and discuss that, but it's not needed. We're depleted. And once you're depleted, you have to replete. What do you think about that? I mean, that's the way I've been looking at depression.
I do often approach it that way. I think there can be kind of variations on that theme. A common question that I ask my patients who are dealing with depression and mood issues is, do they notice a pattern of having increased anxiety for a period followed by depression? Because many people will report that. And even if they don't, instead of anxiety, it might just be these more intensive uh, periods of stress. And yeah, often we are approaching depression from a biochemical point of view in terms of supporting the body, helping the body have the nutrients it is lacking in order to make healthy neurotransmitters. That's why I'm often putting people on B vitamins, encouraging them to eat protein, doing different dietary habits that help the brain form neurotransmitters, because that does can help significantly in many cases, and even sometimes emphasizing healthy fats, because healthy fats help make up the structure of our brain. And so we need all of those pieces in place for our brains to do what we want it to do. And one other quick point on diet, another reason to incorporate healthy fats and proteins into all of our meals is we want to make sure our blood sugar stays balanced by having those foods in our meals. That helps the body release sugar into our bloodstream more gradually, keeping our blood sugar steady. Because of course we know that if we're having drops in our blood sugar, that's another stressor that our brains don't need.
Well, yeah, I was going to tie that together to say sometimes our diet, people think they're doing well with their diet, but they're actually causing stress, especially when they go without eating and then they eat. It's erratic. So a systematic approach looking at the timing of meals, the quality of food, as well as the quantity of food are the three fundamental pillars that are
Yes.
taught in nutrition for people to really work with the diet so it doesn't cause dietary stress. Because I find that most people are just doing soundbite, there's soundbite knowledge out there about diet, and it's actually causing more stress than not, because people don't know what to eat, when to eat, and how to eat. And all of that does indeed contribute to stress. And this whole episode was really on how does stress contribute or not contribute to feeling depressed. And if we alleviate our stress through, as we discussed, diet, breathing practices, lifestyle habits, how we think, we can really lift that veil. And as we said, step into light, and the light shines, and then depression no longer has to exist. And I think that that's the way we could really look at it, and not as a permanent problem, but as a problem that we can really solve with the right tools. So thank you, everyone, for your questions. They're really helpful. Send them in, and Dr. Laurell and myself love chatting about these things and bringing it to our community. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.